Hello there and welcome. Settle in. Let the world outside just fade away. Can you hear that? That gentle drumming on the roof, the soft hiss against the window pane. It's just the rain, a constant, soothing companion for our journey tonight. We're not going anywhere exciting, mind you. No grand battles or daring adventures. Oh no, nothing so stimulating. We're here to gently unravel the threads of a life lived long ago. A life filled with the kind of quiet, unending toil that, paradoxically, might just be the perfect lullaby for your busy mind. Tonight, we're drifting back, way back, to the heart of the Ottoman Empire, to a bustling city, probably Istanbul, though the exact name doesn't really matter for our purposes. What matters is the sheer unadulterated grind. We're going to explore what it might have been like in excruciating, sleep-inducing detail to run a coffee house, a kavehain, from well before the first call to prayer. Imagine the dedication, the sheer monotony. It's the kind of history that doesn't make it into the heroic sagas, but it's the bedrock of everyday life. So, as the rain whispers its steady rhythm, let your muscles unkink, let your eyelids grow heavy. There's no need to fight it. We're diving deep into the mundane, the wonderfully, gloriously dull routine of someone whose biggest daily drama was whether the coffee beans were roasted evenly. Trust me, it's exactly as unthrilling as it sounds, and hopefully just what you need to drift off. Let the gentle rain be our soundtrack as we step into the pre-dawn chill of another world, another life, another endlessly repetitive day. The first thing you register isn't a sound, not really, but a feeling. It's the cold, a damp, seeping chill that has worked its way through the thin woolen blanket and the straw-stuffed mattress beneath you, settling deep into your bones. You lie there for a moment, curled tight, trying to borrow a little warmth from your own body, but it's a losing battle. The darkness in your small room, perhaps a partitioned-off alcove at the back of the coffee house, is absolute. A thick, inky blackness that presses against your eyelids even when they're closed. You know, without looking, that it's still hours before the first faint hint of gray will outline the cracks in the wooden shutters. The muezzin's call, the true herald of the dawn, is a distant dream, a signal that your day will already be well underway. You shift, and a chorus of aches makes itself known. Your lower back, a dull throb from yesterday's endless stooping and lifting, your shoulders stiff from grinding coffee and hauling water. Your hands, oh your hands, they feel swollen and rough, the skin tight across the knuckles. It's the same litany of discomfort that greets you every single morning, a familiar, unwelcome companion. You try to burrow deeper into the meager bedding, a futile gesture. The air smells stale, a mixture of old sweat, damp wool, the lingering phantom scent of yesterday's coffee, and perhaps, if the wind is right, the faintest whiff of the latrine down the alley. It's not pleasant, but it's familiar. Outside, beyond the thin walls, the city sleeps, or mostly sleeps. You might hear the distant, mournful bark of a stray dog, a sound that seems to emphasize the emptiness of the hour, or the scuttling of a rat in the rafters, another unwelcome but accepted cohabitant. Sometimes, if it's been raining, or if it's starting to, like that gentle patter you can just make out now, a soft, persistent drumming, you'll smell the damp earth and wet stone, a cleaner scent that briefly cuts through the closeness of your room. The rain, yes, you can hear it more clearly now. A soft sigh against the wooden planks of the building, a sound that promises muddy laneways and a chill that will cling to you all day. You should get up. You know you should. Every minute spent lingering here is a minute stolen from the relentless schedule that dictates your existence. But the thought of swinging your legs out, of feeling that cold floor under your bare feet, makes you hesitate. It's not laziness, not really. It's a deep, soul-level weariness, a tired resignation to the day ahead, a day that will be almost identical to the one before, and the one before that. The endless grind, as they say. Or, as you'd say if you had the energy for such pronouncements, just life. You wonder briefly if the wealthy merchants who will later lounge on your cushions, sipping the brew you're about to spend hours preparing, ever feel this bone-deep reluctance to face the dawn. Probably not. They have soft beds, warm rooms, servants to bring them sweet tea. You have a straw pallet and the pressing need to roast coffee beans before the city even yawns. It's a thought that brings no bitterness, just a flat acceptance. This is your lot. Slowly, reluctantly, you push the thin blanket aside. The cold air hits your exposed skin like a physical blow, raising goosebumps. You sit up, your joints creaking in protest, and swing your legs over the side of the low pallet. Your feet find the cold, rough-hewn wooden floor, and you suppress a shiver. Another day, another pre-dawn rising, another turn of the endless wheel. You reach for the simple coarse woolen tunic and trousers laid out beside you, the fabric rough against your skin, offering little comfort but a necessary layer against the chill. There's no mirror, no need for one. Your appearance is the last thing on your mind. All that matters is starting the fire, roasting the beans, grinding the coffee, boiling the water. The rituals that define your existence. And as you pull the tunic over your head, the faint, almost imperceptible sound of that gentle rain continues. A soft, steady accompaniment to the quiet desperation of your morning. You wouldn't wish this on anyone, this pre-dawn chill, this aching start to a day of thankless toil. But then again, who would listen? Everyone has their own grind, you suppose. Yours just happens to start in the pitch dark with the smell of impending coffee and the damp promise of more rain. Your first true task, once you've managed to coax your stiff limbs into movement and navigate the dark, cramped space that serves as your living quarters and the back of the shop, is to deal with the coffee beans themselves. These aren't the perfectly roasted, fragrant nuggets you'll eventually serve. Oh no, these are the raw, green, humble beginnings of that potent brew, and transforming them is your first and perhaps most crucial artistry of the day. You make your way to where the sacks of green beans are stored, probably in a corner that's relatively dry, though in this damp climate, especially with the rain that seems to be a constant presence these days, relatively dry is a very flexible term. The sacks are heavy, made of rough jute or hemp, and the beans inside have a faint, almost grassy smell, nothing like the rich aroma they'll later exude. You'll need a good quantity for the day, enough to satisfy the endless thirst of your patrons, from the earliest risers to the late-night lingerers. You measure them out, perhaps into a large wooden bowl or a sturdy basket, your movements practiced. Economical. There's no joy in this task, just a focused efficiency born of endless repetition. Then comes the roasting. This isn't some fancy automated process. This is you, a shallow, wide metal pan, perhaps copper if you're fortunate, or sturdy iron, and a brazier, the mangal, which you'll soon need to fill with glowing charcoal. For now, You might have a small, dedicated fire pit or a section of the main brazier you can get going quickly. The key is even heat, and that's where the real skill and the real tedium lie. You pour the green beans into the pan, not too many at once because overcrowding leads to uneven roasting, and that's a cardinal sin in your world. Burned beans are bitter. Under-roasted beans are weak and grassy. Both will earn you the scorn of your customers, and in a city teeming with coffee houses, scorn is bad for business. So you begin the stir, and stir, and stir. You might use a long-handled wooden paddle or a metal rod, keeping the beans in constant, gentle motion. The pan sits over the heat, and slowly, so slowly, the transformation begins. The grassy smell intensifies for a bit, then starts to change. The beans begin to sweat, losing moisture, and their color shifts from pale green to a light yellow, then to a cinnamon brown. You listen intently for the first crack, a distinct popping sound like tiny pieces of wood snapping. This is a critical stage. Some prefer coffee roasted to this point, lighter, more acidic. Others, the majority in your establishment perhaps, prefer it darker, richer. You know your regulars, you know their tastes. Or perhaps you aim for a versatile medium roast, a crowd pleaser. The stirring continues, your arm already beginning to ache, the heat from the brazier warming your face, a stark contrast to the chill still clinging to your back. The smell is evolving now, becoming more complex, hints of chocolate, caramel, a touch of smokiness. It's a good smell, one of the few genuinely pleasant sensory experiences in your pre-dawn ritual. But even this is tainted by the pressure to get it right, batch after batch. The rain outside continues its soft patter, a reminder of the dampness you're fighting with the dry heat of your roasting pan. You watch the beans like a hawk, your eyes straining in the dim light of a flickering oil lamp or the first glow from the brazier. The second crack might be your next milestone, a more rapid, volatile series of pops as the beans expand further and release more oils. This is heading into dark roast territory. Go too far, and they'll be oily, then burnt, tasting of ash and regret. It's a fine line, a delicate dance, performed with crude tools and intense focus. Each batch takes time, and you have many batches to do. The repetitive motion of stirring, the constant vigilance, the subtle adjustments to the heat by adding or shifting charcoal. It's a hypnotic, mind-numbing process. Your thoughts might drift, but not too far. You're tethered to this pan, to these beans. You think of the cost of the beans, the effort it took to haggle for them in the crowded, noisy market, hoping you got a good price, hoping the quality is consistent. You think of the wood or charcoal you're burning, another expense, another resource to manage. And all the while, you stir. The finished beans, roasted to perfection, are tipped out onto a cooling tray, perhaps a wide, flat basket or a clean stone slab, where they'll rest and release their remaining gases. They are beautiful now, in their humble way, plump, evenly colored, their surfaces gleaming with a hint of oil. The aroma is intoxicating, but you're largely immune to its charms, too familiar with it, too focused on the next batch, and the next, and the next. It's a cycle that will consume a significant portion of your early morning, long before any customer even thinks of stirring from their bed. This sacred duty to the bean, this transformation from humble seed to the essence of the day's social lubricant, is entirely on your shoulders. And trust me, standing over a hot brazier, stirring endlessly while the rain drums on the roof and your stomach rumbles with hunger, you'd probably be thinking there are far easier ways to make a living. But this is your way. This is the smell, the sound, the rhythm of your particular endless grind. Once the beans have cooled sufficiently, their rich, roasted aroma, a deceptive promise of pleasure in a world of toil for you, the next stage of your pre-dawn marathon begins, the grinding. And if you thought the roasting was tedious, well, buckle up, because grinding coffee by hand in the quantities required for a busy kavehane is an exercise in pure, unadulterated, muscle-straining monotony. There are no electric grinders here, no convenient appliances to whirl those beans into a perfect powder in seconds. No, your tools are far more character building. You might have a large, heavy stone mill, a diermen, similar in principle to those used for grinding grain, but smaller. It consists of two circular stones, one stationary, one that rotates on top, with a hole to feed the beans in and a handle to turn the upper stone. Operating this requires significant upper body strength and stamina. You pour a measure of your perfectly roasted beans into the hopper, grip the wooden handle, and begin to turn, and turn, and turn. The stone grates against stone, a rhythmic rasping sound that will become another part of the pre-dawn soundscape of your little world, mingling with the soft hiss of the rain outside. The effort is considerable. Your shoulders, already protesting from the roasting, scream anew. Your arms burn. Sweat, despite the morning chill, might begin to prickle your forehead. The beans are crushed and ground between the stones, emerging as a fine powder, the consistency of which is crucial. For Ottoman coffee, the grind needs to be incredibly fine, almost like flour or cocoa powder. Too coarse and the coffee will be weak and gritty. Too fine and, well, for the traditional brewing method, extremely fine is actually the goal. You check the texture frequently, rubbing a little between your thumb and forefinger. It has to be just right. The fine dark dust gets everywhere, on your hands, your clothes, in the air, settling on every surface. You probably inhale a fair bit of it, a constant dry tickle in the back of your throat. It's the perfume of your profession, a rather less romantic notion when you're the one covered in it. Alternatively, or perhaps for smaller, more precise batches, you might use a large mortar and pestle, a havan. This is no less laborious. You'd place the roasted beans in the heavy stone or brass mortar and then proceed to pound and crush them with the equally heavy pestle. Thump, thump, thump. A different rhythm, but the same exhausting result. This method requires a different set of muscles, but is just as demanding. You'd pound, then stir, then pound again, working the beans down into that essential fine powder. Imagine doing this for hours, because that's what it takes. The quantity of coffee consumed in a single day in your establishment is significant. Each tiny cup, brewed individually or in small batches, requires its measure of this precious powder, and you are the one responsible for its creation, from bean to dust. There's a certain meditative quality to the repetitive action if you're in a generous mood. The steady rhythm of the grindstone, the thud of the pestle. But mostly it's just hard, thankless work. Your mind might wander, perhaps to the faces of the customers you'll soon see, to the snippets of news or gossip you might overhear, to the ever-present worry about making enough to cover your expenses. Or it might just go blessedly blank, numbed by the sheer physical exertion. The rain outside could be a gentle, lulling sound, or it could be a more insistent drumming, mirroring the pounding in your chest and arms. You pause occasionally to wipe sweat from your brow with the back of a dusty hand, to stretch your aching back, to scoop out the fragrant fine powder into a waiting container, probably a wooden box or a clay jar, something to keep it as fresh as possible, though fresh is a relative term when you're grinding enough for a whole day. There's a pride, perhaps, a very quiet, very tired pride, in this part of the process. You're not just a server of coffee, you're its creator, its transformer. But it's a pride buried deep beneath layers of exhaustion and the knowledge that tomorrow and the day after and the day after that, this same Herculean task will await you in the cold, dark hours before dawn. It's an endless grind in the most literal sense of the word. And as you lean into the stone mill one more time, or raise that heavy pestle for another series of blows, you might reflect that those who speak of coffee as a boon or a gift have likely never been the ones to actually grind the beans. For you, it's just another station in your daily Via Dolorosa of caffeination. The beans are roasted, the coffee is ground to a silken powder, but your pre-dawn labors are far from over. Before you can even think about brewing, that first invigorating, or in your case, exhaustingly familiar, cup, there are two other essential elements you need to secure. Fuel for the fire and water for the brew, and neither of these magically appears. No, like everything else in your world, they require effort, foresight, and often a journey out into the still dark, sleeping city. Let's start with the fuel. Your mangal, the brazier that is the heart of your coffee house, the source of heat for roasting, for brewing, for warming the small space, is a hungry beast. It demands a constant supply of charcoal or perhaps wood if charcoal is too expensive or scarce. Charcoal is preferred. It burns hotter, cleaner, with less smoke, which is important in an enclosed space that will soon be filled with patrons. But good charcoal costs money. You might have a regular supplier, someone who delivers, but even then, you need to have a place to store it, keeping it dry. A constant challenge, especially with the persistent rain that seems to be falling more often than not these days. Its gentle rhythm, a backdrop to your every chore. If you don't have a delivery, or if you're running low, it means a pre-dawn trip to a charcoal seller's stall in one of the markets, or perhaps to a less formal supplier in a quieter alley. You take your empty sacks or a sturdy basket and trudge through the dark, possibly muddy laneways. The city at this hour is an eerie place, silent save for the watchman's calls, the aforementioned stray dogs, and the sound of your own footsteps, perhaps splashing through puddles left by the overnight rain. The air is cold and damp, and you'd pull your cloak tighter around you. You'd haggle for the charcoal, your voice low, trying to get the best price, acutely aware that every axi spent on fuel is one less for your own meager keep. Then the haul back. Charcoal is bulky and surprisingly heavy. You'd carry the sacks on your back or shoulder, the rough material chafing, the weight pressing down, making your already tired muscles groan in protest. If it's wood you're after, the process is similar, perhaps even more arduous, as wood is bulkier, and you might have to chop it yourself. Getting the fuel back to the coffee house, stacking it carefully, ensuring you have enough for the long day ahead, it's a vital, unglamorous, and physically demanding task. And then there's the water. Coffee is, after all, mostly water, and the quality of that water significantly impacts the final brew. You can't just turn on a tap. Oh no, you need to fetch it, every single drop. Your coffee house would be ideally located near a public fountain, a cheshme or a sebil for this very reason. But even near means a walk, carrying heavy containers. You'd have large clay jars or copper ewers, and you'd make multiple trips. Back out into the pre-dawn gloom you go, perhaps just as the first sliver of light is tentatively touching the eastern sky, though often it's still dark, the rain still whispering down. The streets might be slick with dew or mud. At the fountain, you might encounter a few other early risers, a baker's apprentice, a servant from a wealthy household, all on similar errands. There's no camaraderie, just a shared, silent understanding of early morning toil. You'd fill your vessels, the gushing water a loud sound in the quiet of the morning, and then begin the careful journey back. Water is heavy, incredibly heavy. Your arms would strain, your back would ache, your shoulders would burn. You'd walk slowly, carefully, trying not to spill a precious drop. And you'd do this trip not once, but multiple times, until your large storage barrels or cistern within the coffee house are full enough for the day's needs, for brewing coffee, for washing cups, for the abdest of your more devout customers. Imagine the sheer volume of water needed. It's staggering. And you are the human aqueduct. The repetitive nature of these tasks, the fetching, the carrying, the careful management of resources, is profoundly wearying. It's a constant drain on your energy, performed in the cold and dark, often with the added discomfort of damp clothes if the rain is more than a drizzle. There's no glory in it, no recognition. It's the invisible infrastructure of your small enterprise, the foundational labor upon which all the sociable charm of the coffee house is built. And as you finally set down the last heavy water pot, your breath coming in ragged gasps, the muscles in your arms and back screaming, you know that this too is part of that endless grind. The fire needs fuel, the coffee needs water, and you are the one who provides, day in, day out, before the city even thinks of waking. The only solace, perhaps, is the brief moment you might take to splash some of that cold, fresh water on your own face, a small bracing shock before you turn to the next monumental task, actually making the coffee. With the beans roasted and ground to a fine, almost ethereal powder, the brazier slowly coaxed into a steady, glowing heart of heat with the fuel you painstakingly acquired, and the fresh cold water patiently hauled and waiting in its earthenware jars, you can finally turn your attention to the alchemical process of brewing the first coffee of the day. This isn't just a matter of pouring hot water over grounds. Oh no, this is an art form, a ritual, and one fraught with a quiet, simmering anxiety, especially these first few batches. Get it wrong and you set a poor tone for the entire long day ahead. Your primary tool is the ksezve, or as some call it, an ibrik, a small long-handled pot, usually made of copper or brass, wider at the bottom and tapering towards the top, with a spout for pouring. You'll have several of these in various sizes to cater to individual orders or small groups. For this first brew, perhaps it's for yourself, a vital kickstart to your own weary system, or maybe for an exceptionally early and invariably particular regular customer who will appear as if by magic the moment the aroma begins to permeate the air. You take a clean ksezve. Cleanliness is paramount. The lingering residue of old coffee can taint the taste, a subtle bitterness that a connoisseur, and many of your patrons fancy themselves as such, will surely detect. You measure the water precisely, using a small ladle or cup, pouring it into the ksezve. Then the coffee. Again, precision. Too little, and it's weak, watery disappointment. Too much, and it's an overly potent, sludgy meh. You've learned through endless repetition, through countless trials and errors, exactly the right amount for each size of kesve, for each desired strength. You spoon the fine, dark powder onto the surface of the cold water. Then, if sugar is desired, and it often is, sometimes in copious amounts, you add it now, stirring it gently into the cold water and coffee mixture before any heat is applied. Some might even add a spice, a crushed cardamom pod perhaps, for an extra layer of fragrance, though that's a flourish you might reserve for specific requests or more prosperous times. Now, the sesve goes to the heat, not directly into the roaring flames, but onto the hot sand or ash bed atop the mangal, or held carefully over the glowing embers. This is where the true skill lies, in managing the heat, in coaxing the brew to life without boiling it too aggressively. You watch it like a hawk, your senses heightened. The mixture slowly warms, the aroma beginning to bloom, that rich, complex scent that is the lifeblood of your establishment. You're looking for the kaymak, the foam. As the coffee heats, a thick, creamy foam begins to rise to the surface. This foam is prized, the crown jewel of a well-made Ottoman coffee. The goal is to let this foam develop as much as possible without letting the coffee actually boil over. If it boils vigorously, the foam is lost and the coffee is considered ruined or at least inferior. It's a delicate balance, a game of patience and nerve. You might lift the kesef from the heat briefly as the foam rises, then return it, teasing it upwards. Just as it reaches the brim, threatening to spill, you swiftly remove it from the heat. Some coffee makers pour off a little of this first foam into the serving cups, then return the sesve to the heat to rise again, repeating this process 2 or 3 times to build up a truly luxurious head of foam. Others achieve it in a single masterful rise. Your technique is your own, honed over countless mornings just like this one. The rain outside, a soft persistent drumming on the roof and against the shutters, seems to underscore the quiet intensity of this moment. A single mistake, a moment's inattention, and the precious kaymak is gone. Your efforts wasted, the coffee a failure. The pressure is subtle, internal, but very real. Finally, when you're satisfied with the foam and the brew is just right, heated through but not scorched, you pour. This too is an art. You pour slowly, carefully, into the small handleless cups, the finken, aiming to distribute the foam evenly among them. The thick, syrupy coffee, along with its fine sediment, settles at the bottom of the cup. It's meant to be sipped slowly, savored, the grounds left undisturbed, and there it is, the first coffee of the day. The aroma, now fully unleashed, begins to fill the still cool, damp air of the coffee house, a signal, an invitation. You might take a moment, just a brief one, to inhale that scent, a complex blend of earth, roast, and sweetness. Perhaps you allow yourself the first sip, a jolt of warmth and energy, a small reward for your hours of pre-dawn toil. It's not a moment of pleasure, not really, more a moment of grim necessity, steeling yourself for the day. But as that first perfect cup is brewed, a tiny part of the weight on your shoulders might lift. You've passed the first test. The foundation is laid. Now, all that remains is to do it again, and again, and again. For every customer who crosses your threshold, each cup a tiny testament to your skill, your patience, and your unending, weary grind. with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee beginning to tentatively permeate the cool, damp air, mingling with the scent of the glowing charcoal and the persistent, soft whisper of rain against the wooden structure of your establishment. It's time to officially open for business. This isn't a grand affair with a ribbon cutting. Oh no. It's as mundane and understated as everything else in your pre-dawn routine. You move towards the front of the shop, where heavy wooden shutters cover the openings that will later serve as windows and the main door. These shutters are sturdy, designed to keep out the night, the cold, and any unwelcome intruders. Unfastening them is a physical task. The bolts might be stiff, the wood swollen from the damp, especially with the rain that seems to have been a constant companion for days now. You grunt with effort, pulling and pushing, until one by one they creak open, groaning in protest like an old man disturbed from his slumber. As the first shutter is pushed aside, a sliver of the pre-dawn gloom from the outside world filters in. It's not daylight yet, not really. More a lessening of the profound darkness, a murky, grayish luminescence that reveals the familiar shapes of the street outside. The narrow, possibly muddy laneway, the tightly packed buildings opposite, their own windows still dark and shuttered. The sounds of the waking city, though still muted, begin to drift in. Perhaps the distant clatter of a cart on cobblestones, the first tentative calls of street vendors setting up their wares, the ever-present soft sigh or rhythmic drumming of the rain. You open the main door, another heavy wooden barrier, its hinges complaining. The air that wafts in is cool, carrying the scent of wet earth and the city's own unique morning breath. Inside, your coffee house is still dim, lit only by the warm glow of the mangal and perhaps a flickering oil lamp or two that you've lit. Now begins the task of arranging the space for your anticipated guests. The seating in an Ottoman coffee house is typically low and comfortable, designed for lingering. You have sederler, long, low platforms or benches built against the walls, covered with woven kilims or carpets, their patterns faded and softened with age and youth. You plump up the cushions, an endless array of them, some embroidered, some plain, all a bit worn, a bit stained, bearing the imprint of countless conversations and contemplative silences. You arrange the small, low tables, often hexagonal or octagonal, inlaid with mother of pearl if you're fancy, or just plain wood if you're not. Each table needs to be wiped down from yesterday's spills, cleared of any stray crumbs or ash. You might sweep the floor, a cursory effort at this early hour, just enough to make the place presentable. The floor is likely packed earth or rough wooden planks, and dust and dirt are constant companions. As you move through these familiar motions, you're essentially setting the stage for the day's quiet drama. And then they begin to arrive, the first customers. They are often the regulars, men whose routines are as fixed as your own. They appear like shadows out of the pre-dawn mist, materializing silently at your newly opened door. Perhaps it's the elderly muezzin himself, stopping for a fortifying cup before he makes his way to the minaret for the ezan, the call to prayer, or a night watchman, his shift ending, seeking warmth and a moment of peace before heading home to sleep. Maybe a merchant, preparing for an early start at the bazaar, needing the jolt of caffeine to sharpen his wits for a day of haggling. They enter quietly, with a nod or a low greeting, their faces still etched with sleep or the weariness of a long night. They find their usual spots, settling onto the cushions with familiar sighs. Their orders are predictable, often unspoken. A strong coffee, unsweetened for the stern-faced artisan, a sweet, fragrant brew for the pensive scholar who might bring his own book or paper. You move to the mangal, your body already aching but falling into the well-worn groove of brewing, pouring, serving. The only sounds are the soft clink of the sesve against the brazier, the gentle hiss of the coffee as it nears its perfect froth, the quiet murmur of greetings, and the constant soothing presence of the rain outside. It's a hushed, almost reverent atmosphere in these early moments, a stark contrast to the lively, sometimes boisterous hubbub that will fill the space later in the day. For now, it's a haven for the solitary, the contemplative, those who, like you, inhabit the quiet borderlands between night and day. And as you serve these first shadowy figures, you are acutely aware that this is just the beginning. The door is open, the signal sent. The endless grind has officially welcomed its participants. The early hours of your coffee house after the initial flurry of pre-dawn preparation and the arrival of the very first shadowy patrons settle into a rhythm dictated by the regulars and their ingrained rituals. These men, your daily bread and butter, are the lifeblood of your establishment, and catering to their often unspoken needs is a key part of your wearying yet essential service. You know them by sight, by their preferred seat, by the exact way they like their coffee, and often by the cadence of their sighs or the topics they are likely to discuss or avoid. There's old Mustafa, the retired scribe, who always takes the cushion in the warmest corner by the mangal even in summer. He arrives with a rustle of papers, perhaps a well-worn book of poetry, and orders his coffee orta shekerli, medium sweet with a single cardamom pod if you have it. He rarely speaks before his second cup, content to gaze into the glowing embers or watch the motes of dust dancing in the faint light filtering through the doorway. You've learned not to engage him in conversation too early. A simple nod and the prompt delivery of his brew are all that's required. Then there's Ahmed, the spice merchant from the nearby bazaar. He's more boisterous, even at this early hour, his voice a low rumble as he greets you and any other familiar faces. He likes his coffee strong and black, sade, and often uses your coffee house as an informal office, meeting with other merchants or suppliers. You'll see him huddling with associates, their heads close together, their voices dropping to conspiratorial whispers over their tiny cups. You pretend not to listen, of course, busy with your tasks, but it's hard not to absorb the fragments of their dealings. Talk of caravans from Aleppo, the price of cloves from the distant islands, the reliability of certain sea captains. It's a glimpse into a world of commerce that is far removed from your own daily struggle for a few copper coin. You just make sure his cup is never empty for long. A silent, efficient service that he acknowledges with a gruff nod and, if he's had a profitable morning, perhaps an extra coin left on the table. And let's not forget the off-duty janissary, perhaps a stern, mustachioed fellow named Yusuf. He doesn't come every day, but when he does, he commands a certain presence. He sits upright, his back straight, his eyes scanning the room even as he sips his unsweetened coffee. He expects prompt service and a clean space, and you make sure to provide it. Other patrons might give him a wider berth, though sometimes he engages in quiet conversation with other soldiers or acquaintances. His presence is a reminder of the Sultan's power, a silent undercurrent in the otherwise relaxed atmosphere of your kahvahane. Serving him is always a slightly more nerve-wracking experience. A misstep could have consequences, though thankfully most are just looking for a moment of respite like anyone else. The cycle is endless. You brew, you pour, you serve. You collect the empty finkenler, Rinse them in the basin of water you hold earlier. Water that is quickly becoming murky and needs to be changed. Another task for your endless list. You listen, not actively but passively, to the hum of conversations. Snippets of neighborhood gossip, discussions about the latest sermon at the mosque, complaints about taxes or the price of bread, philosophical musings from a quiet scholar in the corner. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would cause a stir, just the gentle, monotonous flow of everyday talk. The rain outside might pick up, its drumming on the roof a little louder, and someone might comment on the weather, the dampness seeping into their bones, the mud in the streets. It's all part of the tapestry of the morning. You are the silent, tireless engine at the center of this small universe, ensuring its smooth operation. Your own thoughts are a low hum beneath the surface of your tasks. Did you roast the beans enough? Are you running low on sugar? Will you make enough today to buy more charcoal tomorrow? The worries are small, constant, and draining. You wipe down a sticky spot on a low table, rearrange a stray cushion, stoke the mangle to keep the embers glowing. It's a dance of mundane actions, repeated countless times a day. And as you move through the room, a phantom in your own establishment, you might reflect that each of these regulars, with their specific orders and predictable habits, represents another tiny cog in your own personal, unending grind. They are the reason for your toil, but also, in a strange way, a fixed point in your otherwise fluid and exhausting day. As the morning wears on and more patrons filter in, drawn by the aroma of coffee and the promise of shelter from the damp gray day, the rain still falling, sometimes a drizzle, sometimes a more determined patter. Another Sisyphean task demands your constant, weary attention, keeping the place tidy, or, more accurately, attempting to maintain a semblance of order in the face of the relentless entropy brought by a steady stream of humanity. Your coffee house, while perhaps cozy and inviting in its own way, is not a palace of pristine cleanliness. It's a functional space, and with functionality comes a certain amount of, well, mess. The floor, whether it's packed earth or rough wooden planks, is a magnet for everything. Dust from the street, mud tracked in on countless boots and slippers, spilled coffee, crumbs of bread or pastries if you offer such things, ash from the mangle, and later in the day, perhaps ash from tobacco pipes if those have become fashionable and permitted. You have a broom, probably made of bound twigs or straw, and you use it frequently. But it feels like a battle you're destined to lose. You sweep, and 5 minutes later, new debris appears. It's an exercise in futility, but a necessary one. A visibly filthy coffee house will drive away even the most caffeine-addicted patrons. Then there are the tables, those small, low surfaces that are the focal point of every group. Coffee, especially the thick, syrupy Ottoman brew, is sticky. Spills are inevitable. A jostled elbow, an enthusiastic gesture, a moment of inattention, and a dark, viscous puddle appears on the tabletop. You're always ready with a damp rag, wiping, scrubbing, trying to prevent the sugar from forming a permanent, tacky glaze. The rags themselves quickly become soiled, needing to be rinsed in that same basin of water that's also used for the cups, a system that you privately admit is far from ideal. But what choice do you have? Water is precious, hauled with great effort. Every drop must serve multiple purposes. And the cups, oh, the endless parade of tiny, delicate Finkenler. Each one served means another one to wash. You don't have an elaborate dishwashing setup. You have your basin of water, perhaps with a bit of sand or ash, used as an abrasive for stubborn stains, and another rag. You swirl, you wipe, you rinse, hoping to get them clean enough for the next customer. The water grows progressively murkier, cooler, and less effective as the day wears on. You know you should change it more often, but that means another trip to the fountain, another heavy load to carry. And when are you supposed to find the time for that amidst the constant demands of brewing and serving? It's a compromise, one of many you make daily in this endless struggle. The cushions on the sederler also take a beating. They absorb spills, collect dust, and occasionally, if a customer is particularly careless, might get a burn mark from a stray ember from a pipe or the mangal. You plump them, turn them over to hide the worst of the stains, and dream of a day when you can afford new covers, or perhaps even entirely new cushions. That day seems very far away. The air itself can become thick and heavy if the coffee house is crowded. The mingled scents of coffee, damp wool from wet cloaks, unwashed bodies, and perhaps the faint acrid smell of the latrine down the alley if the wind blows the wrong way, can create a rather robust atmosphere. You try to keep a window or a section of the shutters open for ventilation, even if it lets in more of the damp, rainy air, just to prevent the place from becoming completely oppressive. It's a constant low-level battle against grime, against disorder, against the inevitable accumulation of the byproducts of human congregation. You are the sole combatant in this war, armed with a worn-out broom and a perpetually damp rag. There's no glory in it, no appreciation. Customers notice only when it's not done, when the mess becomes too egregious to ignore. So you toil on, sweeping, wiping, rinsing, a silent, weary custodian of this small, bustling, and perpetually slightly grimy corner of the world. It's just another layer of the endless grind, the unseen, unacknowledged labor that keeps the wheels of your little enterprise turning, however slowly, however creakily. Sometime in the mid-morning, as the coffee house hums with a steady rhythm of conversation and the clinking of cups, a figure might appear at the doorway who signals a slight shift in the day's texture. It's the Meda, the public storyteller. His arrival isn't a grand announcement, no trumpets or fanfare. He simply materializes, often an older man, his face etched with the lines of countless tales told and hardships endured, perhaps a well-worn satchel over his shoulder containing a few props, or maybe just a trusty staff in his hand. He's a familiar sight in many coffee houses, a traditional form of entertainment, a living newspaper, and a welcome, if somewhat monotonous, distraction for your patrons. You don't pay him a salary, not directly. He relies on the generosity of the listeners, a few coins dropped into a hat or a proffered cup after his performance. His presence, however, can keep customers in their seats longer, ordering another coffee, another glass of water, so in a way he's good for business, even if his tales are ones you've heard or variations you've heard a dozen times before. He'll find a slightly elevated spot, perhaps on a stool you provide, or he'll simply stand in a clear space where most can see and hear him. He doesn't shout. His voice is often a practiced, resonant drone, cultivated to carry over the low murmur of the room without being jarring. He might begin with a traditional opening, a blessing, or a witty remark to capture the attention of the room. And then the story begins. It might be a heroic epic of ancient warriors, a romantic tale of star-crossed lovers, a humorous anecdote about the foibles of a well-known local character, or a moral fable with a religious or ethical lesson. The themes are timeless, the plots often predictable. You, of course, are too busy to sit and listen intently. You're still brewing coffee, serving patrons, clearing cups, trying to manage the ever-present tide of small tasks. But you hear him, his voice a constant steady stream in the background, like the rain that continues to fall outside, a soft persistent drumming that has become the soundtrack to the day. You catch snippets of the narrative as you move about, a brave hero facing a fearsome dragon, a clever vizier outwitting a corrupt official, the lament of a jilted lover. The details blur. You've heard it all before. For the customers, however, it's a focal point. Conversations die down, or at least become more muted. Heads turn towards the meda. They sip their coffee slowly, their eyes fixed on him as he uses simple gestures, changes in vocal inflection, and perhaps a tap of his staff for emphasis, to bring his characters and scenes to life. For them, it's a break from their own thoughts, their own worries. It's a form of communal experience, shared in the warm, smoky, coffee-scented air of your establishment. For you, it's just another part of the day. His voice, while perhaps soothing in its monotony for a sleepy listener, is for you just another sound in the cacophony you manage. You might find yourself anticipating the familiar punchlines of his jokes, the predictable twists in his plots. There's no suspense, no excitement, just a well-worn groove. It's like listening to a song you've heard 1,000 times. Comforting in its familiarity, perhaps, but hardly riveting. You might notice some patrons are more engrossed than others. The scholar in the corner might be nodding along, appreciating a classical allusion. The gruff merchant might crack a rare smile at a particularly earthy joke. The young apprentice, eyes wide, might be completely captivated by tales of adventure in faraway lands. You see all this from the periphery, a detached observer of your own establishment's entertainment. The storyteller's performance might last an hour, perhaps more, depending on his repertoire and the audience's engagement. When he finally concludes with a flourish or a quiet blessing, there's a smattering of applause, the clinking of coins, and then the general hum of conversation gradually resumes, perhaps now infused with discussions about the tale just told. The meda might accept a cup of coffee from you, a silent thanks before moving on to another coffee house, another audience. His departure leaves a small void, quickly filled by the routine sounds of your trade. The brief, monotonous distraction is over, and you return to your endless cycle of brewing, serving, and cleaning, the storyteller's droning voice fading into the recesses of your memory. Just another layer in the day's gentle, wearying accumulation of small, repetitive events, all played out against the backdrop of that never-ending, soft, sleep-inducing rain. The afternoon. You'd think, perhaps, that after the morning rush, there might be a lull, a quiet period where you could catch your breath, maybe even sit down for a moment. But you, in your infinite experience of running this coffee house, know better. The concept of a lull is a cruel myth, a fleeting illusion that rarely materializes in any meaningful way. If anything, the afternoon can bring its own unique set of challenges and a different flavor of relentless demand, ensuring your grind remains well and truly endless. The morning regulars, the early risers, and the pre-work crowd may have departed, but they are replaced by a new wave of patrons. Perhaps it's the artisans and shopkeepers from the nearby bazaar taking their midday break, or travelers new to the city seeking refreshment and a place to rest their weary feet. their eyes wide with the sights and sounds of this bustling metropolis. Maybe groups of friends meeting for a leisurely chat, or students from a nearby medres looking for a place to debate and discuss their studies. The faces change, but the needs remain the same. Coffee, strong and hot. A comfortable place to sit. An atmosphere conducive to conversation or contemplation. And you are there to provide it all. A one-man show of hospitality and caffeine. The rain, which might have eased to a mere drizzle for a while, could decide to return with renewed vigor in the afternoon, a steady downpour that drives even more people into the shelter of your kavehani. The air becomes thick with the smell of damp wool cloaks and the steam rising from fresh brewed coffee. The noise level might increase, a more energetic buzz compared to the hushed tones of the early morning. And with this new influx comes renewed pressure on your meager resources. You glance at your stash of pre-ground coffee. Is it dwindling too quickly? You eye the water barrels. Will you need to make another exhausting trip to the fountain, navigating muddy streets, your muscles already screaming in protest from the morning's efforts? It's a constant mental calculation, a low-level anxiety that hums beneath the surface of your every action. Running out of coffee is unthinkable. Running out of clean water is a disaster. Sugar supplies too need monitoring. Some of these afternoon patrons, especially the younger ones or those seeking a treat, might prefer their coffee excessively sweet, and you need to ensure you have enough of the precious cones of sugar, which you'd have to break up into smaller pieces. Another small, tedious task. Then there's the brazier, the mangal. It needs to be fed, the charcoal replenished, the ashes cleared, all while trying not to smoke out your customers or set the place on fire. A genuine, if thankfully rare, hazard in these wooden structures filled with flammable materials. You might also find yourself engaging in more small talk than in the morning. The afternoon crowd can be chattier, more inquisitive. They might ask you for news, for directions, for your opinion on the quality of the dates in the market. You have to be polite, affable, a good host, even when your feet are throbbing, your back is aching, and all you want to do is sit in a dark, quiet room for a week. You develop a repertoire of neutral responses, of gentle deflections, of seeming to listen intently while your mind is actually cataloging your dwindling supplies or planning your next necessary chore. Occasionally, a minor dispute might arise between patrons, an argument over a game of chess or backgammon, a political disagreement that gets a little too heated. You have to be the peacekeeper, the diplomat, smoothing ruffled feathers with a calm word, a fresh cup of coffee, a gentle reminder that the kavahane is a place of conviviality, not conflict. It's another drain on your already depleted emotional reserves. So, no, there's no real lull, just a shift in the rhythm, a different set of faces, a renewed assault on your resources and your stamina. The afternoon is simply another chapter in the long, wearying book of your day. Each page filled with the same repetitive tasks, the same quiet anxieties, the same endless grind, all unfolding as the rain continues its soft, hypnotic serenade on the roof. A constant reminder of the world outside your steamy, bustling little haven. And you, my friend, would probably be fantasizing about the invention of a self-brewing coffee pot or a never-ending sack of charcoal. But such dreams are for the truly idle, and idleness is a luxury you simply cannot afford. Beyond the physical toil of brewing, serving, and cleaning, there's another layer to your endless grind, the business side of running an Ottoman coffee house. It's not a grand financial empire you're managing, far from it. It's a daily struggle played out in tiny copper coins, a constant nagging worry about making ends meet, and the ever-present shadow of official scrutiny. Every cup of coffee you sell, every glass of water or sherbet, if you offer such things, involves a transaction. Customers pay, usually in small denominations, the akçe, the para. You have to collect these coins, make change if necessary from your meager float, and keep track of your earnings. There's no fancy cash register, of course, just a wooden box or a leather pouch where you stash the day's takings. You develop a quick eye for counting coins, a mental tally of income versus expenditure, and the expenditures are many. The green coffee beans themselves are your biggest outlay, their price fluctuating with the harvests in Yemen and the dangers of the trade routes. Then there's the charcoal or wood for the brazier, a constant drain on your resources. Sugar, if you provide it, is another expense. Perhaps you pay a small rent for the premises or a portion of your earnings to a landlord. And then there are the less predictable costs. A broken tezve that needs replacing, a worn-out cushion that finally gives up the ghost, a new broom when the old one is nothing but a few sad twigs. These small, persistent expenses eat away at your profits, making the margin for survival razor thin. You're constantly doing mental arithmetic. How many cups of coffee do I need to sell today just to cover the cost of the beans? How many more to afford a new sack of charcoal? It's a tiring, unending calculation that occupies a corner of your mind even as you're deftly pouring a perfect kaymak or wiping down a sticky table. The rain outside, its gentle, relentless patter, sometimes feels like a metaphor for your financial situation. A slow, steady erosion of your reserves unless constantly replenished by the flow of customers. Then there's the mutasib. This is the market inspector, an official appointed by the authorities to oversee trade practices, ensure fair prices, check weights and measures, and maintain public order in the marketplaces and commercial establishments, including your coffee house. His visit is always a source of anxiety. He could appear at any time unannounced, his stern demeanor and entourage of assistants sending a ripple of unease through your patrons and a knot of dread into your stomach. He might check the quality of your coffee, the cleanliness of your cups, the accuracy of your measures if you sell beans by weight. He could inquire about your prices. Are you charging too much, exploiting your customers? Are you using inferior ingredients? Woe betide you if he finds a serious infraction. Fines can be hefty, enough to wipe out days, even weeks of profit. In severe cases, he has the authority to order your shop closed or even administer physical punishment. So you strive to keep everything in order, or at least to appear to. You maintain a careful deference, a show of utmost respect and cooperation when he graces your establishment with his presence. You offer him your best coffee, hoping to curry a little favor, though you know he's likely seen it all, immune to such transparent attempts at ingratiation. The encounter is usually brief, a few pointed questions, a cursory inspection, and then he's gone, leaving you to breathe a sigh of relief, your heart rate slowly returning to normal. But the shadow of his potential return lingers, another small, persistent worry in your already overburdened mind. There's also the more general, unspoken concern about the authorities' view of coffee houses themselves. Throughout their history in the Ottoman Empire, kahvehaneler have had a complicated relationship with the powers that be. While popular with the public, they were sometimes viewed with suspicion by religious conservatives who saw coffee as an intoxicant or the coffee houses as dens of idleness, gossip, and even seditious talk. There were periods when coffee houses were banned outright, their owners persecuted, their premises shuttered. Even when permitted, they were often closely watched. You know that the conversations within your walls, the political discussions, the critiques of officials could be overheard by informers. So, you try to maintain a neutral space, discouraging overly heated or dangerous debates, though it's a difficult line to walk without appearing to stifle the very sociability that draws people to your establishment. It's a delicate balancing act, this business of coffee. You're not just selling a beverage, you're selling a space, an atmosphere, a social experience. But behind it all, for you, it's a precarious livelihood, built on a foundation of small coins, constant vigilance, and a healthy dose of trepidation. It's a far cry from the relaxed convivial scene your customers enjoy. For you, every clink of a coin in your money box is a small victory against the relentless tide of expenses and anxieties. Another tiny step in your endless, wearying grind to simply stay afloat. As the day slowly, ever so slowly, begins to wane, and the light filtering through your doorway and the gaps in the shutters starts to fade from a weak gray to a deeper, more shadowy hue, a different kind of labor begins, the cleaning of the tools of your trade. This isn't the cursory sweeping and wiping you do throughout the day. This is the more thorough, more dedicated, and frankly, more disgusting task of cleaning the equipment that is central to your coffee-making process. It's unseen by your customers, unglamorous, and utterly exhausting after a long day on your feet. But it's essential if you want to maintain any semblance of quality in the coffee you serve tomorrow. And yes, tomorrow is already looming in your mind, even as today is not yet done. First, there are the Sezveler, those small, long-handled pots that have been working tirelessly all day, brewing cup after cup of thick, sweet, or bitter coffee. By now, they are coated on the inside with a stubborn residue of fine coffee grounds and caramelized sugar. If left uncleaned, this residue will burn and impart a foul, acrid taste to the next brew. So, each Sezve must be scrubbed. You don't have fancy detergents or scouring pads. You have hot water, sand, or fine ash. You pour a little abrasive into the pot, add some water, and then you scrub, using a stiff brush made of plant fibers, or perhaps just a bundle of twigs, or even your own fingers if the opening is too small. It's hard work. The residue clings stubbornly. Your knuckles get raw. You scrub and rinse, until the copper or brass interior gleams, or at least is free of the worst of the gunk. And you have many of these pots. It feels like an endless parade of them, each one demanding your attention. Then there's the mangal, the brazier. All day it has been the fiery heart of your operation, but now it's a mess of spent charcoal, ash, and possibly spilled coffee. Once it has cooled down enough to be handled safely, and you've probably learned the hard way about being impatient with this step, you need to clear it out. You scoop out the cold ashes and unburned charcoal pieces, saving what can be reused. The ash gets everywhere, a fine gray dust that settles on your clothes, in your hair, up your nostrils. It's a dirty, unpleasant job. The brazier itself might need wiping down, especially if it's made of metal that can rust or tarnish. You want it to be ready for a quick start in the pre-dawn chill of the next morning, which is, you remind yourself with a weary sigh, only a few short hours away. The grinding apparatus, whether it's the stonedeermen or the heavy mortar and pestle, also needs attention. Coffee dust, as you know all too well, is pervasive. You need to brush out the mill or wipe down the mortar and pestle, ensuring no old, stale grounds are left to contaminate the fresh beans you'll be grinding before dawn. This is more about preventing flavor contamination and keeping the equipment in good working order than about sparkling cleanliness, but it still takes time and effort. The fine coffee dust, which earlier in the day was a sign of your productive labor, now just feels like more grime to be dealt with. Under your fingernails, despite your best efforts, a dark crescent of coffee grounds and general dirt has taken up permanent residence. Your hands, already rough and calloused from handling hot pots, rough sacks, and coarse cleaning materials, feel even more abused after this end-of-day scrubbing session. The smell of stale coffee, damp ash, and whatever passed for cleaning agents in your world clings to you. It's a far cry from the inviting aroma that usually fills your coffee house. This is the backstage reality, the unglamorous truth behind the magic of the brew, and all the while the rain might still be falling, a soft monotonous drumming that seems to mock your efforts to achieve cleanliness in a world that tends towards dampness and decay. There's a certain grim satisfaction, perhaps, in seeing your tools clean and ready for the next day's onslaught, but it's a satisfaction heavily tinged with exhaustion and the knowledge that this, too, is part of the endless cycle. No sooner is it clean than it's destined to become dirty again. It's a microcosm of your entire existence in this coffee house, a constant battle against entropy, a relentless series of repetitive tasks, all performed so that the whole weary process can begin anew with the first hint of daylight. You wouldn't recommend this part of the job to anyone. It's the kind of work that's best done when no one is looking, and quickly forgotten if only your aching muscles would let you. As true twilight deepens outside, casting long, indistinct shadows within your coffee house, and the oil lamps you've lit sputter and flicker, casting a warm but meager glow, the last few patrons of the day begin to make their slow departures. The energy of the room has shifted. The boisterous conversations of the afternoon have given way to more subdued murmurs. The weary sighs of men who have spent their day in toil or talk and are now contemplating the walk home through the damp, darkening streets. The rain, if it's still falling, and it so often is, sounds louder now, more prominent in the relative quiet, a steady, rhythmic drumming on the roof that seems to encourage introspection and a reluctance to leave the shelter, however humble, of your establishment. These last lingerers are often a specific type. Perhaps it's the solitary scholar, still poring over his texts by the dim lamplight, reluctant to abandon his thoughts. Or a pair of old friends, their conversation dwindling to comfortable silences, savoring the last dregs of their coffee and the shared warmth. Maybe a traveler, with nowhere else to go yet, nursing a single cup for as long as possible. You continue to serve them, though your movements are heavier now, your responses perhaps a little slower. The weariness is a physical weight on your shoulders, in your legs, in the very marrow of your bones. The air in the coffee house is thick with the accumulated scents of the day. Stale coffee, the lingering sweetness of sugar, the faint smokiness from the brazier, the smell of damp wool from cloaks that have been slowly drying, and the undeniable aroma of many unwashed bodies having congregated in one space for many hours. It's not unpleasant, not entirely just lived in. A testament to the day's commerce and conviviality. You watch these last patrons, a sense of detached patience settling over you. You don't rush them, The coffee house has its own rhythm of closing, as organic and unforced as its opening. But in the back of your mind, you're already anticipating the moment when the last one finally rises, stretches, offers a quiet hayırlı akşamlar, and steps out into the night. The sounds from the street are different now too. The bustle of the day has died down. You might hear the call of a night watchman, the distant howl of a dog, the creak of shutters being closed in nearby houses, and, of course, that ever-present rain, a constant lulling drone. As each patron leaves, the space feels a little emptier, a little quieter. The shadows seem to deepen in the corners. Your own fatigue becomes more pronounced. You might start some preliminary tidying, collecting the very last cups, wiping down a table one final time, your movements almost automatic, fueled by the dregs of your energy. There's a certain melancholy to this time of day, a sense of an ending, but also the quiet dread of the impending, all too soon beginning. The lingering smoke from the brazier, or from any pipes that were smoked, hangs in the air, catching the lamplight in hazy beams. You try not to inhale too deeply. It's been a long day of breathing in coffee dust, smoke, and 1,000 other scents. Your lungs, like the rest of you, are tired. You might find yourself yawning, a deep, jaw-cracking yawn that you quickly stifle. Mustn't appear too eager to close up, too weary to offer a final polite farewell. Finally, the last customer drains his cup, rises with a sigh, and makes his way to the door. A nod, a mumbled thanks, and he's gone, swallowed by the darkness and the rain. Silence descends, broken only by the crackle of the dying embers in the mangle, the sputter of the oil lamps, and the steady, soothing rhythm of the rain on the roof. The day is done. Or at least, this part of it. The endless grind has ground to a temporary halt, and a profound, almost painful weariness settles over you. The departure of the final patron is your cue, a silent signal that your public duties for the day are, at long last, concluded. Now begins the ritual of shutting down, a series of familiar, weary actions that bring a sense of closure, however temporary, and a profound, bone-deep relief mixed with a heavy dose of resignation. First, the door. You push the heavy wooden door closed, its creak a familiar sound in the sudden quiet. You slide the sturdy wooden or iron bolt into place, a satisfying thunk that separates your small world from the dark, wet city outside. Then, the shutters. One by one, you pull them closed over the window openings, securing them from the inside. Each shutter sealed is another layer of protection, another step towards the brief sanctuary of the night. The sounds from the street, the rain, the distant city noises, become more muted, more muffled, creating a cocoon of relative silence within the coffee house. The space, now empty of patrons, feels larger, more cavernous, filled with shadows cast by the few remaining oil lamps and the dying glow of the brazier. You move through it like a ghost, your footsteps echoing slightly on the wooden floor or muffled by the packed earth. Next, the lamp. You extinguish them carefully, pinching the wicks or using a small snuffer. Each extinguished flame plunges another section of the room into deeper darkness until only the faint, ruddy glow from the mangle remains, painting flickering patterns on the walls and ceiling. This too must be dealt with. The brazier cannot be left to burn unattended overnight. The risk of fire is too great, a constant fear for anyone living and working in these closely packed wooden structures. You carefully douse the remaining embers, perhaps with a little water saved for this purpose, or by smothering them with ash. A hiss, a puff of steam, and the last source of active light and heat is gone. The coffee house is now plunged into near total darkness, save for any moonlight or faint city glow that might penetrate the cracks in the shutters. The air cools rapidly, the dampness you've been fighting all day seeming to reclaim its territory. You stand for a moment in the gloom, letting your eyes adjust, the scent of extinguished embers sharp in your nostrils. Now, the counting of the day's earnings. This is a ritual performed with mixed emotions. You retrieve your money box or pouch from its hiding place. By the light of a single, carefully hoarded candle or a tiny oil lamp you've kept aside for your personal use, you pour out the coins onto a low table. A collection of copper akçeler, perhaps a few silver para, if it's been a good day. You count them slowly, methodically, your fingers stiff and sore. There's the immediate relief if the pile seems substantial, a fleeting sense of accomplishment. But this is quickly followed by the mental calculation of tomorrow's expenses. More beans, more charcoal, perhaps that rent payment is due. Often the amount is disappointingly small, a stark reminder of the precariousness of your existence. You sigh. It is what it is. Enough to survive, perhaps. Enough to do it all again tomorrow. That seems to be the recurring theme of your life. You secure the money carefully, stowing it away safely. One final cursory tidy up. You might stack the cups you've washed ready for the morning. You might push a few stray cushions back into place, but your energy is at its absolute lowest ebb. The deep cleaning is done. This is just a gesture, a small act of defiance against the encroaching chaos before you finally succumb to exhaustion. The silence of the empty coffee house is profound. It's a silence filled with the ghosts of the day's conversations, the lingering aroma of 1,000 cups of coffee, and your own overwhelming tiredness. The rain outside, if it's still falling, is a soft, lulling murmur, a comforting sound now that your work is done. It whispers of rest, of oblivion. This ritual of shutting down is one of relief, yes, but also of resignation. Relief that the endless demands have ceased for a few hours. Resignation to the fact that they will begin again all too soon. It's the punctuation mark at the end of a very long, very repetitive sentence that is your day. And as you perform these last weary actions, you are acutely aware that you are simply preparing the stage for the next day's identical performance in your unending grind. Finally, with the coffee house secured against the night, the last embers doused and the meager earnings counted and hidden, you can at last retreat to your own small sanctuary, if such a grand word can be applied to the tiny, cramped space that serves as your sleeping quarters. It might be a small room at the very back of the establishment, perhaps windowless, or with only a tiny slit high in the wall, or it could be a simple curtained-off alcove, offering minimal privacy but a degree of separation from the main area where you toil all day. The journey from the front of the shop to your bed is a short one, measured in a few weary steps, but it feels like crossing a vast desert. Every muscle in your body screams for rest. Your feet throb, your back is a solid block of pain, your eyelids are so heavy they feel weighted with lead. You don't bother with elaborate nighttime ritual. There's no luxurious bath, no clean night clothes. You probably sleep in some or all of the clothes you've worn all day, too exhausted to bother changing, or perhaps you strip down to a simple loincloth or undertunic if the night isn't too cold. Your bed is a simple affair, a thin straw-stuffed mattress, a minder, laid directly on the floor or on a low wooden platform. It's likely, lumpy, uneven, and offers little in the way of true comfort. But at this point, any horizontal surface feels like paradise. You might have a single coarse woolen blanket, perhaps a rolled-up piece of cloth for a pillow. It's meager, but it's yours. As you collapse onto this pallet, a groan of profound relief might escape your lips, a sound swallowed by the silence of your small room. The sounds of the city are muted here, filtered through layers of wood and stone and the intervening space of the coffee house. You might still hear the distant, rhythmic drumming of the rain on the roof, now a truly soothing sound, a lullaby for the profoundly weary, or perhaps the scuttling of a mouse in the walls, a familiar, if unwelcome, nighttime companion. The smells are different too, less of coffee and smoke, more of stale air, old straw, your own unwashed body, and the dampness that seems to permeate everything. It's the scent of your brief, precious respite. Lying there in the darkness, your body slowly, grudgingly beginning to unclench, your mind might still race for a few moments, replaying snippets of the day, a demanding customer, a spilled pot of coffee, the worry about the cost of beans. But exhaustion is a powerful sedative. These thoughts soon become fuzzy, indistinct, losing their sharp edges. You don't dream of grand adventures or riches. If you dream at all, it's likely of mundane things. Endless rows of coffee cups, the turning of a grindstone, the feel of charcoal dust on your hands. Or, if you're lucky, you dream of nothing at all, a deep, dark, empty void of unconsciousness. This is the brief reprieve, a few precious hours snatched from the relentless maw of the endless grind. It's not true rest, not the kind that truly rejuvenates and restores. It's more like a temporary ceasefire, a brief pause before the battle resumes. You know, with a certainty that settles deep in your bones, that in what will feel like mere moments, the pre-dawn chill will once again seep into your room. Your aching body will protest, and the whole cycle will begin anew. But for now, for this short, blessed interval, there is only the darkness, the relative quiet, the hard pallet beneath you, and the rain-soaked silence of the sleeping city. You let go. You surrender to the oblivion of sleep, however shallow, however brief it may be. It's the only escape, the only true peace you will know until the first unwelcome stirrings of yet another day. And as you drift off, the sound of the rain, that constant, gentle companion, is the last thing you hear. A soft, percussive whisper, ushering you into the fleeting mercy of the night. And so, our journey through the endless grind of an Ottoman coffeehouse owner comes to a gentle close. As you lie there, warm and comfortable in your own bed, with the soothing sound of rain still whispering in the background, perhaps you can appreciate the profound, almost hypnotic monotony of such a life. The endless repetition, the sensory details of a world so different, yet so fundamentally human in its daily struggles and small necessities. There were no grand pronouncements, no dramatic climaxes, just the steady, unrelenting rhythm of work, from the pre-dawn chill to the weary quiet of closing time. It's a history that doesn't shout, but rather murmurs, lulling you with its detailed drudgery. Hopefully, the sheer, unadulterated tedium of roasting beans, grinding coffee, hauling water, and endlessly scrubbing tiny cups has helped to quiet your own busy mind, easing you towards that peaceful state between wakefulness and sleep. Let the image of that solitary coffeehouse owner finally succumbing to a few hours of fitful rest be a comforting one. His toils are over for the night, and so perhaps are yours. There's nothing more to worry about, nothing more to analyze. Just the soft rain, the quiet darkness, and the gentle pull of slumber. Thank you for joining us on this little excursion into the wonderfully snooze-worthy side of history. May your own rest be deep, untroubled, and far, far away from the endless grind of any Ottoman coffee house. Sleep well.